There was a time in my life when I didn't know what my future was going to look like. My son was 3 years old. I was in a devastating accident. I broke my right leg, both my hips, and I spent months in the hospital. Lying there, I wasn't only worried about healing, I was worried about my son as well. I worried also about how my life was going to look. I was worried about if I was ever going to find love again. Looking at my life now, I wish I could go back and tell that version of me that you have no idea what God is going to do in your life. My son was only 3 years old, and we were living in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia, and we were living there for probably 4 months before the accident happened. I was going to take my aunt to the store, and she got in the car with my 3-year-old son, and she got into the driver's seat. I had gotten a phone call, and so I answered the call, talked for a little bit, and then when I noticed that she was in the driver's seat, I went up to the door and I stood there and was like, no. And so I went down the steps. I was going over to the driver's side of the car. I was almost from behind the car, and she put it in reverse. And she kept dragging me until I fell into a ditch. That was a very hard time. When I came to, I was in the hospital. I was told, that I had several broken bones. I had surgery, and it was a very, very hard time for me. I had to endure a lot during that time, but through it all, I tried to remain very positive, and that is, really hard to do when you are going through something and you really don't know what the outcome is really going to be. I was afraid of, will I heal? Will I walk and live normally again? How am I going to take care of my son? Will somebody ever love me again the way that I am now? Because I really wasn't sure how things were going to play out, after breaking so many bones and having so many physical scars that I still have, on my body now. Excuse me. And people, maybe I didn't give people enough credit, okay, to think that someone could still love me. All right. I ended up staying in the hospital in Georgia for a couple of weeks, and I was very adamant about wanting to come back home. And so at the time, my then husband had came to Georgia to get our son, and we were in the process of getting a divorce. And he came and he got our son, and he took him to Ohio with him at the time because he had moved to Ohio. I got to the hospital in Illinois. I was at the Rehab Institute, and it was difficult. And to hear the doctor say, at this point, there really isn't much that we can do for you right now. And so I had to go home. And my mom, the best mom ever, she really took care of me. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't do anything really for myself. And I just watched life happen around me for months. Some people came to visit, some didn't, my pastor at the time, Pastor Brown, she would come over, and she would bring me food and she would sit and, you know, put lotion on me or, just comfort me and make me feel better and sing, for me. And she'd take me to my doctor's appointments. Just a really great lady. Um, there were so many times I felt so discouraged, just not knowing, missing my little boy, wondering how he really felt, seeing that happen to his mom and he was 3 years old. It just was a very devastating thing. And like I said, I couldn't understand, what was going to happen in my life moving forward. Down the line, I did understand that God was saving me from something, and I didn't see that. And I had a conversation with my pastor, and she said, "You were doing some things that you shouldn't have been doing, that were out of character for you." And she was absolutely right. I was. And she said, God had to, he had to make you stop, so that before something else bad happened, because something really bad was about to come my way had I continued down the road that I was going. I did a lot of partying, just having fun and enjoying my life, and not really caring as much that I was a Christian and I knew better. But I was in a new place, new surroundings, new people, and I wanted to have fun. And I thank God for saving me. I really do. And when I think back on that, I am so grateful where I've come from. I did heal. I was able to raise and care for my son. I found love again. I built a career and a career that was way better than I ever imagined that it would be. Um, a life that I truly love. There were experiences, opportunities, relationships, and blessings ahead that I really could not imagine from that hospital bed. Okay. But you might not be in a hospital bed per se right now, but you might be going through something, a divorce, unemployment, sickness, and you might not see a way out. And I can tell you just to hold on, because you just never know, like, the wonderful work that God is going to do in your life, because only He can see our future. And we do this thing where we plan for it, and it doesn't always work out the way that we plan for. And sometimes, let me tell you, it can be so much better than what you ever imagined, what you ever thought or dreamed for yourself. Okay. What I learned is that I'm stronger than I thought that I was, because man, I went through some heartbreak back then, some heartbreak, some physical pain, some mental pain, and I made it through. And now I remind myself of how far I've come. I remind myself that sometimes we feel like we're losing it all and we don't know what's going to happen or where life is going to go. During that time, I also lost all of my clothes, and I had a ton of clothes, shipped them to Georgia. And when my grandmother went to pack up my things and she moved them, she had them shipped back to Illinois, most of my things were gone because my cousin had stolen them. And at the time, I was extremely pissed, but fast forward to 5 years from then, to 10 years to today, and it has been 27 years because my son is 30. I have way more than I could have ever imagined for myself. And so I almost forgot to mention that part because very quickly it stopped mattering. It didn't matter anymore that my things had been stolen. In the heat of the moment, yeah, you're upset. I definitely was because I loved clothes, but I am in such a better place now than I could have ever truly imagined. I went forward and, like I said, I found love again. I was remarried. We are not together either, okay? But that's okay. But I found out that what I learned is that it was going to change me. It was going to make me stronger. And it was going to make my faith in God stronger. And it was going to propel me to where I never imagined that I could possibly be. Like I said, my career, God gave me a career that was very good for me financially. And now I'm taking those things and I'm moving them into something else, a new career trajectory that I am going to love even more, And so I thank God for what he has done in my life. I thank God for allowing me to continue with life and a good life, not a life where I was paralyzed because it could have went really, really wrong for me. But God said, no, not my daughter. I have other plans for her. I just need to slow her down. And slow me down, he did. And I truly thank God for those lessons because I definitely needed to slow my butt down. I needed to get back to me. And when we do the things that are pleasing to God, we are rewarded, And so if you're in a season right now where you cannot see how your life is going to get better, I cannot tell you exactly what your story will look like, but I can tell you this. The fact that you cannot see what is ahead of you does not mean that God is finished with you. It doesn't mean that he is not working in the background for you. I am living a life today that the woman in the hospital bed could not have imagined. And again, if you are in a form of being in your own hospital bed, your divorce, your unemployment, sickness, losing a loved one, grief, he's not done with you yet. Because each day you wake up is proof that he is not done and that there is still work for you to do. Okay? So find what that is and just take it one day at a time. And I know that it is not easy. Again, it has been 27 years since my accident, and a lot has happened since then. But I thank God every day that he wakes me up and that I made it through that bad season in my life. And again, it is just a season. And I hope that this message was encouraging for you. I hope that you can take something from it and use it in your own life. And as always, I will see you in the next video. I love you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.